Good afternoon everyone and namaste. It's a very interesting topic today we are going to take up. Epidemiological Act of 1897. Till 120 years nobody even thought about this act, never it was interested to anyone till the COVID-19 has come to India. So, even if it is a 120-year old act, it is still applicable in the present scenario. So, before going exactly into the details of this act, let us go into a small history of it and some few definitions to understand about this epidemiology itself. So, first let us define what is an epidemic. It refers to an increase often sudden in the number of cases of a disease about what is normally expected in that population in that area. This is a definition given by the WHO. See, for example, in our area we have malaria. Malaria is prevalent in the entire country and most of the places, but we never use the word epidemic of malaria epidemic. The reason is the number of cases we record is in a normal range, it is not increasing. But sometimes in a given population of a smaller area, let me take of Muchindal itself, we may have a surge of getting 30 cases or 50 cases in a single day. Still we do not call it an epidemic, but we may call it as a sporadic incidence. So, to name it as an epidemic, the number of cases as well as the region is equally important. So, the cases when they are there, like cholera is constantly there in the deltas of Ganges and it will never go away from that place. Malaria never goes away from our from the world itself, because they are having secondary host, but still we do not use the word epidemic, rather we may use endemic. So, our country might be endemic to malaria, endemic to cholera, but not epidemic presently. Okay. So, the next term we often find is pandemic in this. So, what is pandemic? It is nothing but prevalent throughout an entire country, continent or the whole world, or epidemic over a large area. So, we have some type of understanding that when we use a pandemic, it should be cross continent. It is not necessary, like India is even called as a subcontinent. Even if the entire India gets a particular type of disease or infection, still we can use the word pandemic. The pandemic goes absolutely goes with it. And presently if you look at our COVID-19, it exactly fits into the pandemic. And really it had a very mosaic image from North Pole to South Pole, especially North and South Pole people, no human inhabitants. So, corona has left North and South Pole, but it has taken the whole world equally without rather to say without discrimination with religion, caste, color or anything, it has given an equal effect. Now, let us go into a small history of this epidemic itself. There are evidences shown in the history, circa in China in 3000 BC itself the epidemics were there. This was being detected or with an evidence from mass burials. There were houses with huge number of dead bodies in one area without injuries. See, you can say that that can be by war, by killing, by atrocities or this thing. So, then we can say might be it is a war crime or some type of other type of crimes, but they found these bodies without injuries, but with all types of people, that is a male, female, children, babies and everyone, and these villages were never inhabited. So, that showed that these epidemics were recorded even in 3000 BC, that means somewhere around 5000 years back to us. And most of the time our world has witnessed epidemics with plague. Yes, there were some other things also like cholera and all other things, but plague was one of the major epidemic which has been witnessed. But what happened with the plague is it has restricted itself to some parts of Europe, okay, for example, or Africa or US, that the American subcontinents, it has restricted. Cholera restricted, for example, the great cholera of London, England, it is restricted. Cholera in the Bengal and the Indian Ganges area, it is restricted. the first time in the history of mankind we have seen an pandemic which has uniformly spread, that is the COVID-19. Here I have given you some of the dates like plague of 450 BC Athens, and whenever this plague has come, it has minimum taken 20% of the population, the death toll. The most interesting thing is plague of Justinian. Why this plague of Justinian is interesting? It is the word quarantine was first coined during that time, and Venetia used the word first time quarantine in the year 541 AD, and they not only used, they practiced. They thought that this plague was coming by the ships which are coming from other countries, bringing the food grains from other places which carried the rodents and everything, but they were exactly not clear about it. So what they did is, all the ships, everything comes to Venetia should wait in the dock for 30 days, then they have, if they are symptom free, they have to come out into the city, and later on they are extended to 40 days, whatever the so it is. Then again in 1347, even this plague is called as a Black Death. So I use the word here Black Death. Black Death is nothing but another word for plague. Okay, and this has almost wiped out half of the Europe in 1347 AD. The Great Plague of London of 1348 to 1665 is a very important thing. The reason behind it is, it has attacked London 40 times during this period. That means every 10 years it has attacked the city of London, and every time it attacked, it has taken 20% of the population. That is the toll it has taken. And interesting thing it is, in 18th century England has framed an epidemic act, and during the same act was being implemented in India in 1897. Now what they did in 18th century when they implemented the epidemic act is, first thing it is, they used to say that the houses whichever been infected used to be tied with hay to show to the people that this is an infected area. So they created isolation and quarantine. Next thing it is, when the people from these houses were coming into the town or into the marketplaces, they used to carry a white flag along with them, indicating that caution, that we are coming from the area or from the house where the plague is there, or we got cured, whatever the thing, they cautioned it. So that was the first epidemic act and the rules implemented. So now let us see, like the smallpox of the 15th century, that is also understood, but again smallpox was restricted to areas, it was not pandemic. And cholera in 19th century, especially the cholera of 19th century, most of the time speaks about the London cholera. It is not speaking about the cholera which is occurred in the Bengal and in the Ganges deltas. So whenever we talk about cholera, we almost only talk about the Ganges delta most of the time, that is the endemic area. Okay. Now the similar type of COVID-19 what we are seeing, because what I am saying is similar in the sense in the signs and symptoms, because COVID was affecting the respiratory system, or it is a flu like symptoms. It is called as a Spanish flu, which has occurred in the First World War. But the word Spanish flu was a little misnomer. Why it was a little misnomer was, the flu was there in the entire Europe, and the entire Europe was in a war time. And if any person declares that there is a flu here or makes a statistics of it, the army personnel were in fear, and this was affecting their war. But Spain, without any hesitation, it used to take the statistic, it used to take the data, it used to go to the house and everything. That's the reason it was named as a Spanish flu, because they have given out the records properly. It's not like Wuhan virus, whatever Donald Trump has said. Now it is true, it has come from Wuhan, so we can say Wuhan virus, but that time it was not Spanish. Okay. So now let us go directly into the Epidemic Disease Act of 1897. It was neither modified nor changed from 1897 till date. What is this act shows? An act to provide for the better prevention of the spread of dangerous epidemic diseases, and the act provides power to exercise for the control and to prevent any epidemic or spread of epidemic in the state or country. So, the purpose of this act is very clearly mentioned here, to prevent and to one is to prevent the disease, next thing is to prevent the spread and control. So, these are the main aims of this act. The state may authorize. Now, this act has empowered the state. Here when I mean the state, it comes the nation as well as the individual states with certain powers to take such measures if the state feels the public at large is threatened with an outbreak of any dangerous epidemic. So, we can see very clearly in our COVID-19 infection, the states were given enormous power to take its own decision as well as the central decision. Like the center has imposed a lockdown. There when the center has imposed a lockdown, it has imposed a lockdown on the whole country and it said there is nothing to do. The whole country has to go into lockdown. When it started relaxing, it has empowered the states to take its own decision when to open up, how to open up, what to do. So, the center has its own powers and the state has its own powers in this thing. And person who is inspecting is empowered to determine about the process and authority to take responsibility of all expenses incurred in compensation, travelling, temporary accommodation, segregation of infected person. Now, one interesting thing, this 1897 Act to apply in the modern time has some deficits. Where does the money come from to implement this thing? Does any act or any provisions are there to get the money for this thing? So, Epidemic Act is immediately implemented in the nation as well as in the states. Where is the money coming from? So, along with this act, so I will be talking about that one also. Indian Emergency and Disaster Management Act of 2005 was simultaneously implemented, and from that certain other powers were being taken by the state and the central government to get. So, it has some funds, disaster management has some funds. So, the state and center has released that funds immediately to manage the process. And along with these two acts, there is another section. See, the country cannot manage with one simple act of epidemiology. Whenever it is necessary, they come out with different things and different procedures when required. For example, no gathering, that was the most important thing, distancing, no gathering and all that thing. But the Epidemic Act is not showing any of that thing. Anyhow, it is giving the authorities certain powers. So, here what our most of the states and the nation has done is, it has used the IPC section 144, saying that gathering of more than 4 people is offensive or punishable, in one way to say criminally punishable. So, they have implemented IPC section 144 also. So, we can see so many things are coming into the place. Next. The state government can authorize the district magistrate who can take any number of vehicles needed to carry man and equipment to and fro or transporting infected person during an epidemic. If you see in this Epidemic Act, it is all speaking about the authority of the nation, authority of the state given to the district level. District level is most of the by DM, that is district magistrate, or you call him as a collector in our place. These are the people, but here it is not talking about enhancing any property. For example, there is a burst of cases. The government's healthcare services, presently speaking in our country, it provides only 10 to 15% of the healthcare services. 85% of the healthcare services are provided by the private. But in this disaster condition, the 15% is not sufficient, and it cannot make a new infrastructure within weeks or days or hours. So, what does the country do? It can take any property or anything in the country. It can come and say that the James hospital has to be given to the government for me to admit the patients. That is all. And from where does they get that power? That power comes from Indian Emergency and Disaster Management Act of 2005. From that they get that power. In that way, the country was able to take most of the medical colleges, especially private medical colleges, and convert them into COVID centers. Okay. State or central government may take any measures and prescribe regulations for inspection of any ship or vessels leaving or arriving at any port in the territories. So they use the word ship. Here the ship not only means the ships in the port, here in the modern era we mean it even the flights. So this is one of the reason you can see during the COVID time, the docking of the ships were there, and what you call the custom inspection has taken a long time. So there was a hue and cry from the China also saying that the material is not getting into the country. So the government has the power to do that thing. Why? This is to prevent. Another example is, I will not quote example from a country, because this example is once the outbreak has occurred and when entire country has come into the pandemic, there is a hue and cry. There was one passenger ship which was docked near Japan. I think that was there in the news. That was kept under quarantine. They did not allow them to disembark till they were clear, but of course the cases started rising and each country got its citizens evacuated. That is a different issue. So the same thing, if any passenger ship would have come to our place, we would have done the same thing. And violation of any provision of this act is punishable under section 188 of IPC. It can be by fine or criminal offence. Okay. So to understand better on how the COVID-19 was being managed and what were the sections or the laws which were giving that powers, we need to understand the Disaster Management Act of 2005, which has been passed. Under this, an act to provide for the effective management of disaster and for matters connected therewith or incidental thereto. Now the first thing it is, when I am reading this Disaster Management Act, what is a disaster? So first I was thinking, disaster can be one man-made or natural. Man-made disaster like a Bhopal gas tragedy or a fire accidents or a war, and natural cyclones, earthquakes and all comes under disaster management. Now the question is, does the corona come under a disaster? Was it a little bit question has arisen. So what happened is, on March 14th, the central government termed COVID-19 as notifiable disaster, and critical medical condition or pandemic situation was being declared by the Indian government on March 14th, and once this declaration has taken place, the Act 2005 has come into the place. Now the disaster, this is what our law is given the definition. It is a very lengthy, but to understand in various things, means a catastrophe, mishap, calamity or grave occurrence in any area arising from natural or man-made causes or by accident or negligence, which results in substantial loss of life or human suffering or damage. See, not always a disaster means a human life. See, for example, cyclones in Hyderabad. Yes, we had a human life loss, but there was a huge economical loss also. So even that is, for example, we would have saved the human life, but still we call it as a disaster. Got it? Accident or negligence results in substantial loss of human life or human sufferings or damage to and destruction of property or damage to or degradation of environment, and is of such a nature or magnitude as to be beyond the coping capacity of the community of the affected area. In one way to say, he has not mentioned a disease, but still we can take the disease under this thing, as it has created all the problems which are mentioned in this definition. So disaster management means a continuous and integrated process of planning, organization, coordinating and implementing measures which are necessary for expediting for. So I will not read out all the things. It is like a prevention, mitigating, capacity building, preparedness. Like we can say, for the prevention, the country has taken the measure of what you called quarantine or else keeping a lockdown, keeping everyone in the home. And for reduction, mitigating of the risk and all this thing, it is screening methodology. Next, capacity building. Each state has taken its own way of building new hospitals, like taking up a stadium, taking up a open building, taking up medical colleges, whatever the thing, that is the capacity building. And preparedness to deal with any disaster. So for the preparedness, what it did, call back all the doctors or people who are on leave, kept the entire municipal force onto the service. No leaves have been granted at that time. That is preparedness and prompt response to any threatening disaster. So, the prompt response is the government has done by taking all the above measures as well as pushing financially, like crediting the 500 or 1000 rupees for all the below poverty line, whatever the central government, the state governments, each state government has done its own measures. That is prompt response, because people should not die of hunger or whatever the thing, and the distribution of groceries and everything. Assessing the severity or magnitude of effect of any disaster. So, assessment was done continuously on a day to day basis. It was continuously updated on media, and we have Arogya Setu app which was continuously assessing the severity. Of course, it has taken place for a long time. Now, this assessment is government is only doing, people have stopped assessing it, but I would rather say that everyone would have every day seen in their apps what is today's India's toll, India's this thing. Nowadays people are not seeing, but government is seeing even today, every hour and every day they are monitoring it. Evacuation, rescue and relief. Obviously, whenever they found a positive case, they are evacuating, they are rescuing, this is there, and rehabilitation and reconstruction. So, all this disaster management, as per these points, the government has implemented, either can be a state government or the central government in various forms. This is a simple algorithm to show the Disaster Management Act of 2005 how it works. See, we have the central government taking the main responsibility, the state governments, district administration, panchayats and municipalities. The panchayats comes wherever the panchayats are there, like villages and all that thing, the municipalities wherever the municipality divisions come into the place. For example, if the disaster in Hyderabad, the cyclone, it is the state government has given the most response. Yes, central government can give a grant, but the most responsibility has fallen on to the state government. But in a pandemic like this situation, the responsibility was lying on everyone, starting from the central, state, district, panchayats and municipalities. The central government, it has a National Disaster Management Authority. Normally it is mediated by Ministry of Home Affairs. They are the key role players in managing this thing with national what you called as Institute of Disaster Management, NIDM, and National Disaster Relief Force. These are the two things which they have. So, they have the funds into that thing also. So, whenever disaster occurs, they cannot go for grants or anything. So, the funds are kept there, the funds are immediately released and they are used. Okay. And the same way, the state government, it has its own disaster management department which takes care of it, and in the national the chairperson is the prime minister, in the state is the chief minister, and in the district level it is the DM or the collector. This is how the disaster management is done. Now, let us see some salient points under disaster management, because these are the things which have been used. The 2019 National Disaster Management Plan issued also deals extensively with biological disaster and health emergency. So, the 2019 National Disaster Management Plan has kept the diseases also into it. This is the broad legal framework within which activities to continue COVID-19 are being carried out by the union and the state government, as I already said, declared on March 14th. The central government, irrespective of any law in force, including overriding powers, that is, if it thinks it has to override even the state government powers or other powers, other people's ministerial powers, the central government has that overriding powers, can issue any direction to any authority anywhere in India to facilitate or assist in the disaster management. Here the overriding powers, even using these powers, they can take the private properties, they can enact the private properties if required. Like let me say that there is some earthquake and there is a lot of house collapse and everything has occurred, there is homeless people, and private functionaries cannot say no, I have a marriage, I can't give, no, nothing doing. The government says I am shifting these people, I want this, that is all, and he has to keep quiet. The national, because this is in the greater interest of the country, we should not blame the country for it. So, at the end of the day, the country is for the people. The national lockdown was imposed under DM, that is Disaster Management Act, as per order dated 24/03/2020 of NDMA, to take measures for ensuring social distancing so as to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And NDMSA and SDMSA, there is National Disaster Management Authority and state are mandated to provide minimum standards of relief to disaster affected persons, including relief in repayment of loans. So, this is having that law into this thing, loans or grant of fresh loans on concessional terms. You got it? Grant. So, that is why they have given the moratorium. And I do not know how many people have taken corona loan. My bank manager called me during the corona period, sir, we have a corona loan, do you want to take? I was little this thing, how much you are giving? He said 2 lakhs. I said, okay, I want, because at the time the markets were down, I wanted to invest in the markets. So, I went, I took the corona loan, nothing, within an hour he has given. What I want to say is the fresh loans were being issued. The reason behind it is there is a huge financial, because lot of industries closed, they had to pay the salaries. So, for that also the loans were required. Because of this thing, the fresh loans, and this is there in the disaster management protocol on concessional terms. So, the loan interest rates is also lesser, and now on the loan compound interest is being removed for that 6 months and they are paying back. So, I have received 280 rupees back for 6 months. Taking cue from the containment plan for large outbreaks like COVID-19 issued by the Union Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, which is the nodal ministry for biological disaster, several states have issued COVID specific regulations. So, apart from this thing, the states have issued their own regulations how to combat with the COVID. Like the Kerala, in addition to the above invoked legislative powers under entry of 6, Public Health and Sanitation Act is also been revoked of state list and issued Kerala Epidemic Disease Ordinance of 2020. So, they made their own ordinance also to fight with the COVID-19. And apart from this, as already I mentioned, section 144 of the Criminal Procedure Code of 1973 authorizes the executive magistrate of any state or territory to issue an order to prohibit the assembly of 4 or more people in an area. This is one, the common thing has come from the central government on lockdown, that people should stay. Once the lockdown was started relaxing, there is a gathering of the people. So, when the gathering of the people, the state governments has implemented section 144 to prevent gathering of the people. Okay. So, this is how our country was able to use the Epidemic Act and Disasters Management Act and section 144 together to fight, to prevent, to help the people to come out from the COVID-19. Okay. So, I think this is all what I can say about Epidemic Act and this thing. There is no new amendments in the Epidemic Act. So, I would ask Madam to add anything, because it is more related with the social and preventive.
This 1897 was amended time to time as India adopted it slowly, and small amendments were done to the this act, Epidemic Act.
Okay, okay.
It was done.
It was done.
Just to suit the current epidemic.
Okay. But this act was never implemented in our country. I think after 1897, this is the first time this act was being implemented.
The amendment has come recently in September, the Gazette of India.
This 2020 September.
So the amendment has made provisions. They have classified, earlier it was only one page.
Yeah.
Now they have classified and made definitions of each term. For example, they have included health sector, basically. Any damage to health property as well as health personnel. It includes doctors, nurses, social health workers and community health workers to be prevented from damage or prevented from working in any situation pertaining to COVID.
Pertinent. Okay.
That is the latest.
Okay. That means after the COVID, they realized their points and they amended the thing. I have not gone.
There was attack on that.
prevented from not only doctors, healthcare workers,
Prevented from executing their.
from doing their duty forcefully. And
Okay.
so that is the act is amended to make it punishable if somebody is preventing a doctor or a healthcare worker from performing the duty, then it is in the favor and protection of prevent that particular.
Okay.
The point that I'm
So that is applicable only during epidemic, or is it applicable 365 days irrespective of epidemic?
irrespective of the epidemic.
Irrespective of the epidemic. Okay.
And specifically made so for epidemic as
So
well.
okay.
So that was an additional thing.
Yes, it has been passed by Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha.
Yes.
4th of September 2020.
2020. Okay. So we are protected.
It was a main demand from the, IMA, that the attacks on doctors.
Yes, yes, yes.
No, that was not usually punished.
But
like
yeah,
that.
I think during Rajshekar Reddy time it was implemented in the Andhra Pradesh itself. We had an incident and they brought this law, but it's a constitutional amendment.
Cognizable offence is under criminal procedure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that is one. I think most important thing is that it is a national calamity.
Yes.
So as a citizen, responsible citizen, and specifically people who are working in healthcare, since it is a healthcare calamity essentially, arising out of a natural, category. It is a natural category, the biological.
Yes, it's a natural category.
So it becomes even more relevant for every citizen, especially those working in the healthcare sector, to be trained to respond to it.
Yes.
So that is why if you see many of the state governments employed what is called as training for COVID warriors.
Training for COVID to respond. Yes.
COVID warriors. So the training was divided into multiple things. Doctors were trained differently. Healthcare nurses were trained differently. The interns were trained differently because they were supposed to do different levels of job, which essentially would bring this whole thing into together. Like for example, I would suggest that there were less number of intensivists,
Yes.
right? So the capacity building was required to quickly build in the number of intensivists would be required to manage the mortality.
Yes.
I see.
I see you.
So even a non-qualified intensivist, so-called, you could be an orthopedic surgeon, you could be a nephrologist, or anybody who is trained into the basics of medicine, were given trainings to work as intensivists.
Yeah. Like the cross specialties has come into the place.
Exactly. That's one part of it. The second part of it is those who were only graduates, graduates in medicine. They were trained to work at primary healthcare level, to collect
Yes.
the data, to understand the mild, moderate and asymptomatic. So essentially, this was only possible because capacity building and preparedness activity
Yes.
can be implemented by the government under the Disaster Management and Epidemic Act.
Act.
So we had no choice.
Yes, there's no.
Nobody had any choice, and that's precisely the point that we want to drive home. That once an epidemic act or a disaster management act is implemented in your state, in your region, in your district, or even in your local area, correct? All the citizens have non-negotiable, there is no negotiation.
There's no negotiation in this thing. Non-negotiable.
Right. So if somebody says that this college has to be converted into a quarantine center, there is no negotiation.
Yes.
Or a hospital has to be converted into a COVID center, for example. There is no negotiation about it. It is the national duty of the people to offer that particular infrastructure, offer their services as per their capabilities.
Yes.
And for that, any particular special training is required. That training has to be conducted by the government in convention with this thing.
Yes.
So this to me is a very, because this is working in COVID is essentially a national duty.
Yes. National duty. Is that
It amounts to saving lives of those who are vulnerable. And it could be that you are risking your life. Yes, you are risking your life, but it is a national duty. Like how a person would fight on the borders for you, he's risking his life doing a national duty.
Yes.
It is an internal state emergency. That here we have to risk our lives to do the national duty that comes in front of us. So I do not see that there is any choice that henceforth we would like to offer to anyone. Right? So this is a non-negotiable, scenario. It is a national scenario, and it is the duty of healthcare workers. You, me, all are healthcare workers.
Yes.
Am I right? It is the duty of all the qualified healthcare workers to contribute to this national calamity as per their capabilities. As per their capabilities. If you have X capability, you contribute at X level. If you don't have intensivist training, you don't have to work in the intensive area. But you can work at the primary health level. You can work
On the screening levels and everything. Yes.
You can work in the public health area. You can work in sanitation area. Anything that happens. So one of the things that really should be driven home is this is a national calamity. This is a national call, right? And
Yes.
once the government implements that particular act, and it is still
Still in force.
So if we are called to do the duty, it's non-negotiable and it has to be done. Right? So that's one part that we should, all the time keep in mind and be prepared for it. Yes, the risk is going to be there. The risk lies here also. I don't know if, the ceiling might fall on me at this
Oh,
point.
yeah. Everywhere they say, if we drive home, the risk is there.
There are more people dying on road accidents than people have died on
Corona.
any other. So a risk cannot be a reason for avoiding a
National call.
national call. Correct?
Yeah.
That's right. The second part, which I honestly, sincerely feel, is social distancing, hand washing, wearing a mask, and early diagnosis. These are 4 definite interventions which have impacted COVID.
Reduce the mortality rate like that.
Reduce the mortality rate. These are the 4 important. Early diagnosis was the most important thing that we found out would prevent the mortality rate severely.
So one more thing I want to add on the fifth point is care of the person. See, initially when the COVID started coming, the people were isolating their own family members. There is no care. There was a lot of depression and psychological trauma these people were undergoing.
Stigma was there.
The stigma was there. So because of that thing also, the comorbid conditions exacerbated and the deaths have occurred. Now what the people are trying to do is, they are taking care of their persons, they are keeping in their home, they are talking with them, they are giving proper diet, following whatever the government regulations or medicines prescribed. So the mortality rate has come down, and they are not feeling shame to say that if they got corona. The starting, it is something like HIV, the people were hiding it.
Right. So the stigma is definitely one factor in any epidemic.
Yes.
If it is an infective epidemic, stigma is one factor that everybody is scared of. But
Scared of.
yeah, that's one part. But people get sensitized, right? My neighbor gets it. My fellow worker gets it. Tomorrow I might get it. God knows. So the thing is that people get sensitized by the fact that this is something that is going to happen to everybody
Yeah.
over a period of time. So there is nothing really to be stigmatized about. How did you get it? It's not a question. And it is more so a droplet transmitted infection.
Yes.
So there's nothing that somebody can do. Luckily, it's not an airborne infection. So
Yes.
you'll be able to meet up at a distance with a mask and still have this kind of if it was an airborne infection, we had no other choice.
Your mask also will not help.
Exactly. So the point is, it's important to assess the risk that we are playing in. Hand washing, wearing a mask, following social distancing, right? And 4, early diagnosis and providing treatment on day 1.
Day one.
People who took treatment on day 1 have maximum survival rate. People who crossed day 4 have maximum mortality rate. People who received oxygen before steroids have better survival rate. People who received oxygen after steroids have not been having that kind of a survival rate. So
Yeah.
essentially, we did not find that it is more one particular drug that acted as a miraculous rescue drug.
No doubt.
It is the combination or the protocol that was implemented by ICMR or for that matter the state bodies, whichever it is, helped understand and bring down the mortality, which was once, I remember, was more than 3% or 4%, is now around hovering around 1.5%.
And even if you see the drug regime, the starting, there was a steroid, there was an antiviral drugs and everything. Now slowly government removed for antiviral drug,
Exactly.
no role. Then they removed the steroid, because we learn from what mistakes we have done or how this thing is behaving.
The key part was timing of introduction of the treatment.
Yes.
And the oxygen requirements and when to give that. And now the researchers have come up essentially talking about that these were the things that were relevant for doing it. The other important thing that we honestly realized was that integrative approach had a strong role to play. Ayush systems of medicine had a significant role to play, not just distributing arsenic album. The systems played on both sides of the table, the preventive as well as the therapeutic.
Curative.
Ayurveda played a significant role, so did homeopathy. The uptake of homeopathy and Ayurveda in terms of sales also has gone up. It indicates that people have accepted the Ayush systems of medicine as something that they thought was useful. Now the key part is we don't have the research is getting published, right, which could substantiate the claims that we have made.
Yes.
We don't have the research is getting published for justifying why somebody should take medicine A, medicine B or medicine C, or why somebody should take an adjuvant drug along with modern medicine, why somebody should take Ayurveda, why somebody should take homeopathy or Unani or whatever it is. This seems to be the major issue at this point of time. The threat perception of corona is slowly, waning off, but it's only threat perception which is waning off,
Not corona.
not corona.
Yeah. And this has taught one more thing, it is unnecessary hospitalization has come down in the public. See, most of the time unnecessary hospitalization than giving benefit was causing harm because of nosocomial infection and everything. That has come down. People started little bit, means if I have to compare with the past, the trust has improved on the Ayush. I have seen many people getting into the homeopathy or Ayurvedic and this thing, they're fine. And as I said, once the results comes out, I think the scientific community has to start accepting it.
The more important thing was that people were willing to look at it an integrative approach. The modern medicine has certainly played a major role, without doubts. But the Ayush systems of medicine were found to be adjuvantly useful
Yes.
while using the modern medicine. Now this to me is a unique opportunity because this model of using integrative approach to bring down mortality, to bring down length of stay, to bring down the cost of treatment and to prevent post-COVID infections, post-COVID complications is very, very important. And my take on this is that every institution, in whatever way they can bring something about this to the table for the community, should be prepared to bring that to the table for their own community, whatever it is. It could be a community around you, 5 kilometers, 10 kilometers, 20 kilometers, or you should be in a position to bring this to the table for the community and offer that upfront. So that it's not only that we are offering what we know and what we specialize in, we are also essentially serving the nation at this point. Because there is, you see, doctor-patient ratio is skewed in India. I mean, it's not some, it's a known fact,
Yes.
right? Number of beds to the population is very, very skewed in India. The nursing requirements are very skewed in India. In this situation, and when there is a national calamity, not to offer service, to me, is an opportunity lost for lifetime.
Yeah.
Sir, I want to add one success story of India, since you are telling we are using so many things, disaster management, section 144. Though not connected to only corona, I am speaking about one program which was introduced in 2004, funded by the World Bank. It was called IDSP, Integrative Disease Surveillance Program. That has played a major role now also, because this IDSP has such a beautiful, surveillance protocol that a disaster is, an epidemic in the beginning only is reported very well.
Okay.
Nearly 1,000 episodes, more than 1,000 are prevented from spreading because of this IDSP program. At 3 levels we see the reporting. One is the ASHA and health workers. They just this is called syndromic diagnosis. They just identify. They are trained to identify, or maybe this is an epidemic. Like rice water stool is there, 2-3 people in one family is there. Immediately it is informed to the medical officer. And the second level diagnosis is done by medical officer. It's a probable diagnosis. So clinical examination in all this is done. And third will be laboratory confirmatory diagnosis. And it is done successively very quickly. And there is even weekly reporting is a must. Even nil also should be reported.
Yeah.
Not that when it is
You are right.
So and software based and IEC immediate dissemination of information and activity from 2004 onwards, it has really contributed a lot for controlling the epidemic in India. IDSP is a somewhere of course state-wise somewhere it is laxed and it is not working, but it is overall it is a success story. It has really helped in exfoliating into corona control.
So early diagnosis and sending the reports. Yes, India has the capability of early diagnosis. Many countries, once this pandemic has broken out, they were not having a diagnostic kits. They had to wait weeks together. But India was in a position to do it immediately. So we have to thank to all these things.
No, I think, so my overall, the idea, thank you doctor for actually, bringing this all together. But I think we should continue this particular series that we want to start now, that we know why we are supposed to work, that we know what is the importance of we being, built to our capacities to, deliver. Because I am very certain the threat perceptions of corona has changed because the testing levels today are not as high as they were 2 months ago.
Yes.
So the testing density is reduced, and that is why you are not diagnosing COVID. Yes, the mortality has certainly come under control. So the threat of losing life probably is not as deeply perceived as it was 2 days ago. No doubts about that. But COVID per se is still existence in the communities and it is existent in the society.
And a huge asymptomatic cases.
And hugely asymptomatic cases are still existing in the. So we certainly still have the role and the scope to be prepared for what is now called as second wave, right? Which could be a mutant virus, which could be a bounce back, or which could be a relapse. It could be either of these three. We certainly have a scope to engage ourselves with that kind of a scenario. And I look at this as what we have started today is the first step towards educating ourselves to respond to that wave if and when it arrives at our shores. So the next thing forward is that our microbiology department and our pathology department will now present the microbiological perspective and the pathological perspective of COVID-19 And then we will have the clinical perspective of COVID-19 that the Department of Medicine should present, right? And then the next would be, essentially we would look at, the homeopathic part of it, the materia medica part of it. If there are any other issues related to potency, posology selection and all that, we would call in the organon department to present that. And we will also invite Ayurveda specialty to come and present their side. So that gives us the overall modern medicine, homeopathy,
Yes.
and the Ayurveda part of it, which will help us do this. So my suggestion is that if every same day, same time, we should meet for 1 hour, and we should have these presentations for 45 minutes and maybe 15-20 minutes of
Discussion
around it. So Dr. Dole, I think you can arrange for the next set of speakers, give them the task and what we expect them to do. And as Sir brought in the forensic angle to it, the act part of it, the next part will be then to bring the virology and the pathology angle. And then from there we build up into the next. So we get the etiology, we get the pathology, then we get the clinical medicine, and then we build it up from the therapeutic angle. I think we should give ourselves a month, and post-month we should be all prepared with what needs to be done if and when this kind of a
second wave comes into place.
happens. Okay. We will also get a hygienist. We will also ask the hygienist to come and train in how to wear a PPE, how to do and doff the PPEs. We will get that training done as well. I don't think we need government to tell us what to do now. The government has done its job.
Yeah, it has done its job.
Now our responsibility to train ourselves and be prepared for it. And I am making it very, very clear, it's a non-negotiable duty for anybody working in gyms. Okay? It's an absolute non-negotiable duty for anybody working in gyms.
Can I have one question?
Yes.
You see the disaster management fund is there. What about the PM CARES fund is there?
Yeah.
Does it fall under this?
PM
CARES fund.
No, no.
It is not.
PM care fund is always separate.
Separate.
It is not coming under this disaster.
No.
PM care fund is separate. It is a separate fund created for, it directly goes into PMO's,
But that is
not under home use.
but that is aimed for serving to the
It will
public.
be used for different purposes,
Okay.
including this.
Including.
Yeah, from there it can come here. He can use for whatever purpose he thinks it's right.
Of the PMO's office.
CMO.
Yeah.
So thank you, Dr. Reddy, for
Thanks.
wonderful presentation. And really, I appreciate the way you actually demonstrated its implementation in 2020 of what has been created in 1897. Correct?
Yeah.
So I think there was a foresight, right? Even though it might have been adopted from a Western world, we had the act in place. This itself is a
They, in 300 years, they have suffered 40 times, so the British has to create that act.
exactly.
See, the person who suffers will understand better.
So essentially, the purpose of the act is to draw all the natural and all the available resources in the state
In the state, yes.
to protect and prevent the citizens of the citizens and the property
Yes.
of the state. This is the fundamental business about the Epidemic Act as well as the Disaster Management Act. Thank you very much.
Okay, sir.
Wonderful,
Yes.
and appreciate your efforts.
Thanks.